Hello and welcome. My name's Heather. I'm a registered professional counselor and a certified life coach, and I like to analyze different scenes from the show Gilmore Girls. If you're new here, thank you so much for being here. Today, I'm going to be watching clips from the episode Here's the Rub, where Dean catches Jess and Paris hanging out with Rory on her big night in. Let's get to the show.
You want to be alone to do laundry?
And watch TV and eat the Indian food that I love but my mom hates the smell of and go to bed early and... Are you mad?
Why would I be mad? You want to spend tonight alone.
Totally normal that Rory would like a night in and to spend some time alone, and it's perfectly healthy in relationships to foster that sense of self. A lot of times when we're in relationships, we tend to get caught up in spending time with our partners. We put our hobbies on the back burner, and we are less likely to hang out with our friends, and we get lost in the relationship, especially when we're younger. It's also important for our partners to realize that this is healthy, and we can see that Dean looks disappointed. Now, I mentioned before that it's possible for Dean to have preoccupied or insecure attachment, and if that's the case, then hearing this from Rory can bring up feelings of insecurity and rejection. So let's see how Rory handles this.
Tomorrow, the whole day is all about you. I mean it. From morning till night. You plan it, or I'll plan it, or we can get a professional to plan it. Whatever you want. Just don't be mad.
I'm not mad.
Good.
I'm confused, but I'm not mad.
Good. So she does a really great job reassuring him that she wants to spend time with him the next day. And this can help ease any feelings of insecurity or feelings of rejection that Dean may have felt. And we see that he reassures her that he's not mad, but he does say he's confused, which can be a normal reaction, especially for someone who doesn't spend a lot of time alone. Generally speaking, people feel uncomfortable being alone, and being alone is viewed as a negative thing. There's a difference with being alone and feeling lonely. And usually, if people are very uncomfortable with being alone, it's a sign that they need to develop a stronger relationship with themselves. And that's where therapy or working with a registered counselor can help.
Delivery.
What are you doing here?
Well, Luke figured since you're alone tonight that maybe you wouldn't have any food in the house, so he sent over a care packet. Where should I put this?
Well,
Kitchen?
Rory is having her night in that Paris crashed, and Jess shows up with a bunch of food.
this could feed 12.
Excuse me, I've seen you eat.
They do eat a lot on the show.
So how come Caesar didn't bring this over?
I volunteered.
Why?
Just wanted to get out of the construction zone. Why? Did you think I wanted to come over here and see you?
No.
I just needed some quiet.
Jess clearly says this to see Rory's reaction, because he already said that he just wanted to get out of the construction zone, and he could have just left it at that. You can also see how he says it, in that he's trying to insinuate something, or he's trying to flirt with her. And because she says no, he reconfirms that he just wanted some quiet. Now, what if Rory would have said yes, that she thought he came to see her? Would he admit that he actually wanted to see her? What do you think? Let me know in the comments below.
You want money?
No, I'll take fry though.
Okay, yeah, have as much as you want.
Okay, great.
You're staying?
Didn't you just invite me?
No,
No, you told me to have all I wanted. That sounded invitation-like.
Another example of how Jess was able to influence or manipulate the situation to get what he wants. First, by not leaving after dropping off the food, then by saying that she didn't tip him, and then offering to take fries instead of money, and now he's invited himself over for dinner, but convinces Rory that she was the one that invited him over for dinner and ignores her protests of saying no. If he wanted to avoid the construction at Luke's, he could have asked if he could stay a bit before heading back.
Don't worry, I was just leaving. If you find my flashcards, call me, okay? No. What? Stay. For dinner.
It's possible that she knows that on some level, it's not appropriate to have dinner alone with Jess at her house. It could be considered an intimate setting. On one hand, they're friends, but on the other hand, we don't really know what Jess's intentions are. Rory can also be conscious of not wanting to hurt Dean's feelings, especially with everything that's happened between him and Jess. And maybe she feels that inviting Paris as a buffer will help her feel more comfortable with the fact that Jess is staying for dinner.
Think we need a chaperone?
No, I don't.
You just invited one.
Just being polite. Paris is alone tonight, and you yourself just said that we have enough food for 6.
It appears that Jess wasn't too happy with the fact that Rory invited someone else to join them for dinner, which could signify that he was expecting to be alone with Rory. Maybe Jess is uncomfortable having someone else there. We know that he's not the friendliest of people. Rory defends her action by saying that she was just being polite. So what else could Rory have done? She could have been assertive and told both Jess and Paris to leave, and that she wanted to spend the night alone.
Typical guy response. Worship Kerouac and Bukowski. God forbid he'd pick up anything by Jane Austen.
Hey, I've read Jane Austen.
You have?
Yeah, and I think she would have liked Bukowski.
Apparently, some fans wish that Jess and Paris got together. I never thought about this before, but it might have worked. It might have been really intense because Paris is intense, but there's definitely potential. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below.
Hello?
Hey,
Oh, hey. Where are you?
on my way to see you, if that's okay.
Oh, well,
I know you want to be alone, so I'll only stay a minute.
Rory is now freaking out because Dean is coming over to say hi and that he's got a surprise for her. She tried talking him out of coming over by saying she looks like a mess and that Paris is over. Now, she could have used this as an opportunity to give him a heads up as to what he might be walking into. So why didn't she? Well, usually when people lie or try to hide things from others, it's usually from a place of fear. Fear of how the other person would react or fear that they'll get judged. Lying can also come from a place of guilt, knowing that what they did can cause harm to someone, and so they try to hide it from them.
what's going on? Nothing.
Dean's on his way over and Rory doesn't want him to find me here.
Why?
Yeah, what? You really want me to go?
I really want to avoid a fight with Dean.
Rory is trying to get Jess out of there as quickly as possible because she knows that Dean will get upset and it'll most likely lead to a fight. I would imagine if most people were in Dean's shoes, they would be upset as well.
Dean, Jess just came by to bring me some food.
I see you brought a little something too. Is that ice cream? That's so nice.
As soon as Jess sees Dean, he starts belittling him, and he knows that it doesn't look right that he's leaving Rory's house. He could have just left, but instead, he starts demeaning Dean by saying it's so nice that Dean brought ice cream.
Really got that down. It helps that you're 12 feet tall, but this Frankenstein scale really adds to the whole...
Jess.
Okay, I'm going.
And then Jess continues to provoke Dean and only stops when Rory says something. Maybe Jess enjoys the fact that he can get a rise out of Dean, and he gets an ego boost knowing that. It might also be possible that he's trying to take attention away from Rory, so Dean focuses on getting mad at him instead of getting into a fight with Rory. But honestly, I think that this is making the situation worse because Dean is already flooded, meaning that his physiological state is triggered. And then Jess is getting him even more riled up.
What the hell is going on?
Hi, Dean, you remember Paris, right?
Yeah, hi.
We see that Dean is extremely upset and he's expressing feelings of anger. We know that he and Jess don't get along, and now he's reacting to Jess's comments. And he's probably angry because of Jess provoking him. He might also be feeling confused because Rory told him that she wanted to spend the night alone, and he finds her with his nemesis and feels betrayed.
So just drop this off, huh?
Oh, well,
Now I know you eat fast, but this is a lot of food to put away that quickly.
Dean caught some inconsistencies with Rory and Jess's story and feels that she's lied to him. In a way, she was, because she wasn't upfront with Dean, and she knew that if Dean found out that Jess was over, then they'd get into a fight, which is why she tried to sneak Jess out of there as quickly as possible when Dean was coming over.
You told me you were doing laundry tonight.
I was.
And now you are here with Jess.
And Paris.
Jess, Rory.
It's not okay that Dean is getting that angry at Rory. Honestly, I don't see why they couldn't have gone into a different room to talk. He's clearly triggered and he's angry. Again, it's normal for him to have his own feelings, and I can understand where he's coming from. The important thing is how it's communicated. It sounds like in Rory's mind that having Paris there would offset anything inappropriate happening, and that Dean should have assumed that Paris was the social buffer or chaperone, as Jess would put it.
You didn't what? You didn't know he was coming over?
I didn't.
And you also didn't know he was going to stay, right?
It just happened.
How does that just happen?
They weren't doing anything wrong. They were discussing books and eating. I wonder if they had a previous conversation in which they agreed that Rory wouldn't hang out with Jess. If that was the case, then yes, there was a violation of trust.
Well, he was... And the diner was... And
We see Rory stumble with her wording and her explanation, which could be caused by Dean's reaction, and now she's getting triggered. When we perceive a threat, our bodies go into fight, flight, or freeze response, and it looks like Rory may be experiencing the freeze response. This can also be an indication of how Rory normally responds to conflict or perceived threat. The other possibility is that she doesn't know how to explain to Dean without him getting upset, so she's having troubles trying to spin her explanation in a way that makes sense and doesn't upset him further.
And you what? What? Say something.
Stop yelling!
You totally lied to me.
I didn't!
So, did Rory lie to Dean? The situation did happen. There wasn't a premeditated plan set in place for Rory to hang out with Jess and Paris without Dean. She was actually doing her laundry, and she did tell Dean that Paris crashed her hermit night, but she intentionally left out that Jess was there. It could be considered lying by omission, which is still a lie.
Turn the situation around, Rory. How's it looking?
It's looking complicated, and I'm trying to explain it to you.
That's crap.
This is obviously not the best way to communicate, and he's not allowing Rory to explain, and he's yelling at her because of his heightened physiological state. And because of his heightened physiological state, Rory isn't able to explain herself. If this fight happened in one of my sessions, I would slow things down to get them into a calmer place and not feel flooded. The important key is to focus on how each other's feeling and finding that common ground and empathy between two people in conflict. Sometimes it's okay to take time or space before revisiting the conversation, and it might actually be more functional than what's going on right now.
It's my fault that Jess was here. I saw him in the diner the day I came to Stars Hollow, and I thought he was cute. Thanks for trying to cover for me. That's okay.
So Paris comes in to stop the fight. According to Bowen's theory, it's easy for friends and family members to get triangulated into the situation. Basically what that means is that two people are in conflict. Typically, a third person would be triangulated into that conflict. Dean and Rory are in conflict, and Paris asserts herself to be triangulated into participating in that conflict. There are functional ways and dysfunctional ways to triangulate. A functional way is when the triangulation helps to resolve that conflict, whereas a dysfunctional way is to participate in the conflict and you take sides or you make the conflict worse. Oftentimes, people who get triangulated in will side with their friend and bash the other person, which doesn't help resolve the conflict. For example, Paris could have jumped in and told Dean to back off and that he's overreacting and that Rory didn't do anything wrong. And I'm sure you can imagine that it would escalate the situation and the argument can get even more heated. In this case, Paris interferes and takes the blame off of Rory, so why would she do this? She might be feeling a heightened sense of anxiety seeing Rory get yelled at, and this is her way of helping to reduce those feelings of anxiety. She already knows that Rory doesn't want to get into a fight with Dean, and she's kind of aware of the dynamics with Jess, and so she's trying to defend her friend by absorbing the blame as a way to end the conflict.
Rory, is this true?
Yes, it is.
Paris and Jess.
I know.
Since Paris was able to end the conflict, Rory feels a sense of relief, and she probably feels less anxiety also, which would explain why she went along with Paris's lie. So remember why most people lie? It's usually out of a place of fear, and Rory already knows how Dean would react if she tried telling him the truth. Albeit she didn't do the best explaining what happened and ended up looking more suspicious. But she wants to do whatever she can to avoid getting back into the fight or that conflict with Dean. So she goes along with Paris.
Well, if you say so, then I have to believe it, don't I?
Yes.
Lying in any capacity is harmful for the relationship, and I've said it before that Dean can read Rory really well, and I think he knows that she just lied to him, which explains his response now.
Sorry that I yelled.
Completely justified under the circumstances.
So he's apologized for yelling. I'm glad he's mentioned it, and it's definitely a start, but it's very minimal, and it's usually not enough to be considered a meaningful apology. I'm guessing that at this point he's still highly triggered or flooded. He could have elaborated and said something like, I'm sorry for yelling and for jumping to conclusions. My reaction was extreme and I'm sorry. I should have let you explain the situation to me, and I was just surprised to see Jess was here on your night in, and it made me feel insecure. I felt like you didn't want to spend time with me. Again, the problem was not fully addressed, and Rory could have also apologized here as well. She could have apologized for not telling him what he was walking into, or reassure him that she won't hang out with Jess if that's what they previously agreed on.
Don't you want to stay for ice cream? I can hang out.
No, I'm just gonna go.
I'm still seeing you tomorrow, right?
Yeah, sure.
She does try to reassure Dean by saying that if she were to hang out with anyone tonight, it would have been him. Rory also tries a repair attempt by asking him to stay and have ice cream together, but he decides to leave. It's possible that he wants to leave because he suspects that there's something off about Paris and Rory's explanation. It could be because he feels ashamed for reacting the way he did. Maybe it's also because he wants to process his emotions on his own, and he wants time and space to do that. Either one of these possibilities, or a combination of them, can help explain what he might be going through, and we won't ever really know unless we're able to ask him directly. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and give this video a thumbs up. Make sure to take a look at my other therapist reviews videos of Gilmore Girls, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Until then, be kind and love yourself.